Welcome to Nicholas Hood III Ministries, a ministry of hope, spiritual inspiration, personal power guided by Christian love. May the power of God's Holy Spirit fall upon you as you sit back and enjoy today's program. I introduce you now to Pastor Nicholas Hood III.
You know, in life and in our communities, we have all kinds of colloquial expressions, where we just turn the English around. Words and sentences like, you might refer to a person when you meet them as Dap Daddy, Big Mama, Byzantine Queen, so forth. But one of those expressions that I like is real simple. When a person believes that they can do something, even if others think that it's an enormous challenge, sometimes they'll say, I got this. I got this. And that's how they say it. And then the person proceeds to show you that they really do have it. Well, God says the same thing to us. There are many times in our lives when we feel overwhelmed, we feel like we don't have the power, we don't have the strength, we don't have the know-how, we don't have the connections. But through Jesus Christ coming to earth, that was God's way of saying, quite simply, you got this. That's what I'm going to be talking about, and I'll be right back. And the point that I'm making is that in everybody's life, at some point, there's a plan B. God is talking to us every step of the way. God is trying to show you something every step of the way. When things seem to be going wrong, that's God's way of opening another door. I am convinced that God has been directing me every step of my life.
On the Word Network. This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and His power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out.
I have a word of inspiration and hope for any person looking at this today who feels like you just can't make it. I don't know if anybody here feels overwhelmed with your taxes, overwhelmed by not having enough money, overwhelmed with your health. I want you to know that the reason why Jesus Christ came to earth is to tell you and me in so many words, you got this. You got this. I came that you might have life, more abundantly. Cast your burden upon the Lord, and He will carry you. In the story of Gideon, the 6th chapter of the book of Judges, we have a good example of this, where Gideon is threshing out the wheat in a wine press. Now think about what I just said. He's threshing out the wheat in a wine press. He's not threshing out the wheat out in plain view of everybody in a normal kind of way. There's no threshing floor under a big tent where he's threshing out the wheat. He is depressed in a wine press because he doesn't want the Midianites to see him. And so when an angel of the Lord comes to Gideon and says, rise up, O man of God. The Lord has called you to deliver your people. Gideon gets smart alecky with the angel. And he says, if God is with us, why has all of this happened to us? And what has happened to them? The Bible tells us that the Midianites, who frankly, they're just one stone throw away from the Jewish people. They're all there together. The Midianites claim their heritage to Abraham through Ishmael. The Jewish people claim their connection to Abraham through Isaac. Isaac and Sarah. And, Ishmael was the child of Abraham and Hagar, who at one point was Sarah's maid. And so the Midianites are more dominant at that period. And Gideon raises a smart alecky question with God. He says, if God is with us, why has all this happened to us? And sometimes we raise the same question as Gideon. Sometimes we just can't believe that God is really on our side. And to make matters worse, we ask the theological question. It's called the question of theodicy. If God is so good, if God knows everything, and if God is all powerful, then why am I sick? Why am I lonely? Why do I not have enough money? How come a tree fell on my house? How come I can't get my life together? How come I'm lonely right now? And these are hard questions. And in the case of Gideon, he throws it back on the angel. He says, I'm sorry. He said, but if the Lord really wants me to fight the Midianites, he said, the Lord's got to show me something more than what I'm seeing. He said, I want to put a fleece on the ground. And I want to put a fleece on the ground and let it stay there all night into the morning. And when the morning comes, when the morning sunlight begins to rise, I want the fleece to be wet and I want the ground to be dry. And he said, and if you show me that, I'll believe that this is really God talking to me. And lo and behold, the next morning, the fleece is wet and the ground is dry. And then he says to the angel, he said, don't get mad at me. He said, but I really want to make sure this is God talking to me. He said, I want one more night and one more morning. And he said, this time I want the reverse. I want the ground to be wet and the fleece to be dry. And he does that, and the next morning it happens. And so Gideon realizes at that point that God is really with him. And I don't know if there's anybody here who's ever felt like you wanted to test God. And I'm not here preaching today to say that you need to test God in order to step out in faith in God. But in the case of Gideon, that is what he does. And after Gideon is convinced that God is really on his side, you can't turn Gideon away. And Gideon begins to amass all of his people. And lo and behold, they find out that they are stronger than they really realize. And I think there's somebody looking at this who's stronger than you realize. Your back is up against the wall. You don't have enough money. Your health isn't great. And you don't have any assurance from the doctor that you're ever going to get well. You don't know whether or not God really matters. Or maybe you're praying for a sick child, a sick grandchild, and you don't know, is God really on my side? And if God is on my side, I don't know if God is going to step down from heaven and deliver me, deliver my child or my grandchild. That's what Gideon is doing. And in the case of Gideon, what the angel is doing by, putting up with Gideon and Gideon's questions of God is the angel is trying to assure Gideon that everything Gideon needs, he already has. In other words, you got this, Gideon. You may not feel strong enough. You may not feel smart enough. You may not feel like you can amass enough people to fight with you. But I am on your side. The Lord is on your side. And the Lord will help you to fight this battle. And somebody today needs to hear that message. Because somebody today doesn't feel like you can carry this load. The load is bigger than you think. When I think about what the United States Supreme Court has done to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. That's on one hand very depressing. But on the other hand, I believe that the Lord is going to show the nation a way forward. I believe that the Lord is already doing this. And I think that we're going to look back one day and realize that the hand of the Lord has been sheltering us. The hand of the Lord has been directing us. The hand of the Lord has been guiding us all this time. And because of it, and what the hand of the Lord is going to show us is that the power is right within our hands. Somebody looking at this right now needs to realize that you are stronger than you think. You may not be able to walk. I've been talking to some ladies who have called this program, and they tell me, they say, Reverend, I can't walk. I'm wheelchair bound. But you know what? You may be wheelchair bound, but you're getting around. You may be confined to home, but you're able to think. You're able to pray. You're able to feel. And I want you to know that your life, there's a lot more life in you than you may realize. You may think that you're old, but you're not too old. You may think that you've made some mistakes along the way, but it's not the end of your life. In matter of fact, some people might say that your life is just beginning. You know, when I think about my life, I looked at a photo of me, a couple of photos, one when I was 16 and just starting to play R&B music. That was a chapter of my life, but that chapter is gone. I looked at another picture when I was 41. I went on the Detroit City Council. That was a very engrossing, exciting period of my life, but that chapter is gone. And I think about the 40 years, now 41 years, I've been a pastor, and my 50th year in the ministry. It's all tremendous. And I'm not saying the ministry is gone, but this ministry here on the Word Network is taking my ministry to another level. And the lesson that I'm learning in this is that God is reminding me that God is not through with us yet. God is not through with me, and God is not through with you. Your marriage may be a big mess up, but God is not finished with you. You may have made some mistakes with your children, but it's not the end. You may have made some mistakes with your money, but it's not the end. Somebody looking at this has made mistakes with their body. You've eaten things and drank things that you didn't need to eat and didn't need to drink. And maybe your body is messed up, but it is not the end. If you are alive, you still have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to get it right. And so I'm here today to encourage you. I'm here today to encourage you, to let you know that you got this. That an angel of the Lord is looking at you right now saying, you can do it. You may feel weak, but I am strong. You may feel lost, but I can show you the way. You may be hungry, but I will show you what to eat. You may not even have enough food to eat. But as Charles Dix would say, get your fork, your knife, and set the table, because my God is able. God has your name with a blessing on it right now. So my friends, I want you to think about this. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Gideon when I come back. But thanks so much for being with me today. And the point that I'm making is that in everybody's life, at some point, there's a plan B. God is talking to us every step of the way. God is trying to show you something every step of the way. When things seem to be going wrong, that's God's way of opening another door. I am convinced that God has been directing me every step of my life.
On the Word Network.
As I shared in the first segment, the question of theodicy says quite simply, it has 3 points. Number 1, God is good. Number 2, God is all-knowing. Number 3, God is all-powerful. Therefore, if God is all-knowing, all-good, and all-powerful, then why do bad things sometimes happen to good people? And in the story of Gideon, Gideon raises the question of theodicy, this big question about the nature of God, when Gideon is in a wine press threshing out the wheat. And the reason why he's in a wine press, depressed under the ground, out of plain view, was really to protect himself. The Midianites were raiding the land. They were, they conquered the land. And they had more strength, more power than what the ancient Israelites thought that they had. And so the Bible tells us in the book of Judges that the Midianites would wait until the harvest, and then they would swoop down, and basically they would take the crops. Not only would they take the crops, but they pitched tents. In effect, they created their own little communities there, waiting for the Israelites to plant the crops, to grow the crops, and then they would come back and take the crops. And so when an angel of the Lord comes to Gideon and says, rise up, O mighty one, the Lord has called you to deliver your people. Gideon's response is the same response that very often we have, which is, if God is for me, then why have all these bad things happened to us? And frankly, I believe there's somebody looking at this program today who probably has raised that same question. I go to church regularly. I pray regularly. I try to live right. I try to do right. I try to be right, but I'm still sick. I try, and I believe that God has blessed me, but I don't understand why I can't get ahead. I don't have more money. I don't have enough money to pay my bills. I don't have enough strength to go from day to day. I've been talking to people who call this program after the program, and it's one of the most delightful times of my week, where I call some of you back, as many as I can, if there's a good message or a good phone number that you leave, and I encourage you, you can call me today, and I'll try to call you back. But several people have told me, I'm confined to a wheelchair. I can't walk. I can't get around. I'm dependent on somebody else. I'm dependent on somebody to help me pay my bills. I'm dependent on a daughter or a son to help me go to the market or do whatever I want to do. And for some people, when your life is in that situation, you might raise that same question of Gideon, which is, if God is really for me, then why is my life so messed up? Why is my life messed up? And in the case of Gideon wants to test God. He tests God because he can't believe God. And so in the test of Gideon, if you may remember what I said in the first half, he said, God, if you're really for us, I'm going to leave a fleece out on the ground, and I want the fleece to be wet in the morning with the dew, and I want the ground to be dry. And when the next morning comes and what Gideon asked for happens, he says, God, don't be angry with me, but I want to flip it. This time, I want the fleece to be dry, and I want the ground to be wet. And to his pleasure, it happens. And once Gideon realizes that God can do anything, Gideon becomes empowered. And he becomes a judge of Israel. He calls together the people, and as things turn out, he's very successful in protecting his people. He's very, very successful in protecting the land. And one of the parts of the story of Gideon in protecting the land that I really like is that at one point when he begins to embolden the tribes of Israel, he's gathered them together. He has over 30,000 men who've said, we're ready to fight back. And you know, in life, a lot of times you don't know how strong you really are until you just get mad and you say, I'm just not going to take this anymore. I'm going to stand up for myself. And in the biblical witness in Judges, between chapters 6 and 8, you'll see that this fascinating story where the tribes have gathered together. They have over 30,000 men who say, we're ready to fight the Midianites. But God talks to Gideon, and he says, that's too many men. He said, because one, I'm going to make you victorious, but two, I don't want anybody to say you're victorious because you had 30,000 men. He said, give the men a gracious way to go home. He said, just tell them, anybody who really doesn't feel like fighting, go home. And at that point, the number drops dramatically. I forget exactly what that second number is. It's about 20,000 men. God talks to Gideon. He says, that's still too many. And he says, send them home. And then the most dramatic part of this story is God tells Gideon, he says, take the men down to where the water is and invite them to drink the water. He said, but you watch them carefully. And he said, the men who cup their hands together in I would say, a dignified kind of way, the men who cup their hands together, they scoop it into the water and then they drink it out of their hands. He said, tell them they can go home. Think about that. And what a test, to decide who fights and who doesn't fight, the way they drink water. He said, but I want you to watch carefully the men who drink the water by lapping it with their tongues like a dog. Like that. He said, those are the ones you want to fight. And as it turned out, he only had about 300 guys, who were drinking the water in a crude way like a dog. But I guess God was trying to tell Gideon, if you're going to be fighting, that's fighting is animalistic. And you need somebody who's going to, they're not going to hold back. I always laugh when I think about that scripture because I say, if I'm ever in trouble, I want people with me who are ready to watch my back. I learned the other day that a guy died, Jerome Dew, who I grew up with, went to elementary school with him in Detroit. And one day I had a situation. I was only 10, 11, maybe 12 years of age. But I had a situation a block away from my house. I was a Cub Scout, and we were just playing, around, and one of the boys got hurt. I was not fighting him, but he got hurt. And some of the other boys thought that I was the reason why this boy got hurt. Basically, he and I were sliding on the marble floor of his house, and he slid and hit his head on a metal table leg, and he passed out. And it was upsetting to all of us. But, when the boy came to, all of our little Cub Scout group went outside, and the other boys made a circle around me, and like they were going to fight me. And I thought about something my dad told me when I was a little boy. My dad told me, he said, now, Nick, if you're ever in a situation where a group of boys or a gang of boys decide that they want to fight you, he said, don't try to fight everybody. He said, because there are too many. And you probably won't do well. He said, what you should do is pick the weakest boy in that circle and hit them and just start running. And I thought about what my father told me. My father's a minister. And I looked at that circle of boys around me. We're in the driveway of the house. And I looked at the boys in the circle, and my eyes stopped on the boy who looked like he was the smallest boy there. And I smiled to myself. And I don't know if the boys saw me smile, but I smiled at him because I was saying to myself, you are the one. You are the lucky boy today. And I hit that boy with everything that I had, and he fell down. The other boys were shocked at what I did, and I started running home. And as I ran home, which was only a block away, there was another boy, the one who just died, Jerome Dew. He chased me home, and I kept thinking to myself, I think I'm going to have to fight this guy. I don't want to fight, and I've seen him before. He's a pretty aggressive boy. It's not going to be pretty. And about halfway down the block to my house, I just got tired of running, and I just stopped, and I looked at him, and he said, Nick, he said, I don't mean you any harm. He said, I just want to tell you, you did pretty well back there. And we laughed about it, and I went home and I fell out. But the point that I'm making is that, if you're in a tough situation, you want somebody who's a hard fighter. Now, and I'm not suggesting that, you start fighting people. But what I'm saying is, if you have a problem, you need somebody who's committed to be with you. And that's what Gideon did. Gideon found people who were committed. And if you have a handful of committed people, you can change the world. I think about Jesus Christ. He only had 12 disciples, and one of them was a traitor. But they changed the world. And the world is still changing because of the ministry of those 12 men. So, again, I want to thank you so much for watching the program today. If it's been meaningful to you, I want you to think about supporting it. There are some people who've been very kind in supporting this ministry. We're still growing, but I want you to ask yourself, could I support this nonprofit ministry to the tune of maybe $10 a week? It's not a lot of money, basically about $40 a month. But there are some people who are doing that, and I tell you, you're making a difference. Thank you so much for being with me. I look forward to being with you next week. And until then, remember, I am praying for you. God bless.
This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and His power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out.
And the point that I'm making is that in everybody's life, at some point, there's a plan B. God is talking to us every step of the way. God is trying to show you something every step.